Right, Phil, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through a couple of rigs that I use. Quite a few people have seen them in the magazines and everything else. Everything I've tried to do, because of the style of fishing that we're doing on a match venue, it's not too sophisticated in the way that you have to be when you're fishing for only a few fish or big wary fish. You know, there's certainly there are like buses in here, one comes along and then another one will take its place. On a lot of waters where I fished, I have to use more sophisticated rigs to catch the fish.
Because there's less fish generally?
Because they're less, and I want to make sure that we get a really, really good hook hold. In waters like this, or heavily salt waters, you always seem to get, you know, if you lose one, or, you know, I mean, you always get another one coming along straight afterwards, because there's just so many fish in it.
Well, that's true to say. There is a lot of fish here in the Specimen Lake, and they're all sorts of sizes, but there is some big boys near you now.
Well, I just don't like to catch one.
Okay, so tell us typically what sort of rig you're going to be using today then, Derek?
Right, well, what I've done is I've just used one of our standard rigs out of the pack. These are the ones that we sell to the public. They come in a packaging like that. As you can see, that's got a barbless hook on it, and it's tied to our sinking braid, Maver sinking braid. It's, as you can see, it's got a little hair built into it. If you have a little look.
It's a high quality braid with a loop, yeah, on the hair.
Yeah, so you can put your body
Very
on.
strong forged in-turn hook with a very long and very sharp point, I can see from that.
They're very sharp. I know I had one in my hand the other week and I had to get someone to pull it out with a pair of pliers, but it had a barb on it.
Yeah,
it wasn't barbless.
So that's pretty basic, but nicely tied, hangs lovely. So that's one rig that you're going to be using.
Yeah, one of the features of it is it's got an 8mm swivel on it, and an 8mm swivel will fit any type of lead clip. You know, that's one of the things sometimes when you see some of these ready rigs, especially when people have tied them up in shops or whatever, that the swivel isn't a size 8 that's sitting on it.
Right.
And it has to be, because every clip on the market will take an 8mm swivel.
Okay. So that's rig one.
So that's just a bog standard basic rig. This is how we tied it up. All right, this is our lead core. As you can see with that lead core, a lot of lead cores are quite fat in size, and what we've done is when we chose this one, we looked through quite a few. I wanted a really smaller diameter lead core, because the last thing I want is a big thick lead core laying out there.
Yeah, what impresses me about that, Derek, and I've seen a few lead cores or weighted lines like this used down here, that has relatively little memory in it, does it?
Yeah. No,
That's good.
It's good.
That's good.
You know, I mean, that will just sit there, and as you can see, it's quite weighted. Now, what I've done on this side of things, right, I'll show you a little instance with our clip for starters. We'll start at the lead end, right? If you look at that clip, right, it's got a small little bump up the shank of it, where you push it on up the tubing. Now, if I'm fishing in weedy waters, this is a little tip, right? You just push it up to the bump. And then what you can do is, when you're casting, if you're casting at range, you just wrap some PVA around the clip, around the back end of the clip, so you can cast it. And then that PVA will melt. And when the PVA melts, right, that's just sitting there, and that's only just on up to the bump. Right, and then what will happen, if you hook a fish in the weed, as soon as the fish takes the bait and starts shaking its head and everything else, what'll happen, that'll come clean off, and that forces the fish to the surface, so you don't get it caught in the weed. So that's one little tip with our clip, having that little bump.
So
on
that's
it.
really what you can say fish friendly.
Yeah, because the worst thing when you fish in weed is if you've got a big lead on, or even a small lead, you want to discharge it as fast as you can. Right, and normally what'll happen, that will go on the tape.
Well, the beauty, of course, here on Longford Specimen Lake, and this fish jumping as we speak, you don't have a weed problem here.
No, no,
it's
no,
a
no,
very
no.
clean,
So-
gravelly bottom, so you
So
won't have
then
that
what you
problem.
do is if you look at that, you can push it up over the bump, all right, and that's it.
Fantastic.
So that's that all set.
Okay, and the business end?
Right, on this end as well, what I've done there is I've used a lead clip cover, you know, one of our the rubbers that you use on the clip, right, and what I've done is I've put a quick change clip on there.
Yes.
Right, this is one that we do in our packets. We do lots of different, we do 2 sizes in that. And what you can do is you can get it going a lot quicker, and you can have a bait already made up if you want to do it, and then just slide it onto there. So that's that, like that. And there you can see, I'm using a size 6 MV2, right, and that's a cell boilie, a mainline cell boilie on there. It's the whip with a knotless knot.
Right. And that, as I'm turning that, that's automatically turning
Yeah.
every time, isn't
Yeah,
it?
that's because of the hook.
Yes.
The hook that I'm using there is that MV2, right, and the MV2 has got, if you look, has got a slightly in-turned eye on
Yes,
it.
yes.
And we got that angle on the line, on the hook, to do that purpose. If you look at what Ben's doing a little bit later, I think Ben, you'll find he's putting a shrink tube on his as well. But what I try to do is I try to do it with a knotless knot, and I do a few more turns on that as well, so it comes up the shank. Normally I whip it up to the point, and what happens, it just aids in the turning of it.
Yeah, yeah. But that's tied perfectly. I mean, I'll demonstrate that again. As I pull that hook across my hand, you'll see that it turns and hooks every time. So that's pretty powerful hook hold, I would think, on any bite. You're going to contact most of your fish, I would have thought.
Yeah, most definitely. One of the things is if you look at where the line, right, comes in, because it's turned in, you must always have the line come in from this side
From the back
to
of
make
the eye.
it turn, you know, opposite the point.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, because if you turn it the other way, then it'll work the other way because it'll push it back out that way.
Brilliant. So that's 2 basic rigs that you're definitely going to be using today. I understand Ben down the way has got another rig we'll look at in a minute.
Yeah.
But between you, probably, what, 3 or 4 rigs will serve the purpose today.
Yeah. And the only other rig that I use is my one that we call the Jimmy Savile.
I remember that one in Italy very well indeed.
Again, you know, like if you look at the way that's tied up, all right, that's tied with 20-pound fluorocarbon, and we've got a 16mm boilie on there, and where you've got the swivel, it acts as a counterbalance. That will take that 16mm pop up down to the bottom, and what happens, as you can see there, it jiggles about all over the place, so that when the fish gets it in its mouth, it can't, you know, when they're sucking and blowing, trying to get rid of it before they bolt off,
eject it.
It can't get it out. A lot of the time, I've had a lot of, I'd call this, you know, this for me is my big fish rig. I wouldn't use it in here because there's no point, you know what I mean?
Why is there no point?
Well, because the thing is, when you've got a lot of small fish, right, you've got a tendency to, that it doesn't perform properly when a small fish is attacking it.
Well, all that being said, Derek, I'm going to ask you to use that at some point today, because there are fish in here that go between 25, 35 pounds, maybe even 40 pounders, and I believe you'll catch one of them today.
Well, I just hope we do.
Well, you know, it's going to be difficult, but, you know, I've seen some big fish as I walk down the lake, a few big fish crashing. I want to see these put into action now. Let's get the rods out and see what's happening.
All right, not a problem.
Good.